This video will be about one of the biggest hypocrites I have ever met in my life, Jorobe.
TikToker Jorobe, real name John Robert Bell.
Jorobe is an individual who had incredibly inappropriate interactions with people that were underage.
I don't really feel comfortable saying his name, given his platform and everything.
This is where it begins.
DilG16 Dylan is a TikToker who was recently took to TikTok with his story on John. Dylan explains that he became friends with John when Dylan was not of age.
John first followed me whenever I had about 30,000 followers and joined my live stream and asked for my Snapchat. He asked me if I wanted to get an Airbnb with him on my 18th birthday, which was over 3 months away.
I don't care what anybody says, there are clear intentions here.
John would even join group Zoom calls with people aged 15 to 19.
So I met this creator almost a year ago through a group chat of kids from the age of 13 to around 18 maybe, and trying to get us to call him hot.
I felt like I couldn't say no because, I don't know, I felt like I trusted him and then tried to get me to do things and was sending me things that I didn't want.
He started sending me shirtless pictures of him working out, him in bed, texting me really late at night, asking me a bunch of weird questions. Do your parents let you travel, and do you like to travel?
I don't care what anybody says, he knew that these people were fans.
I didn't say anything for the past 8 months because I thought I was the only one until recently.
And the biggest problem is that after we found out his allegations of inappropriate interactions with young people, we found out he works with kids.
I don't like the sounds of that. Apparently he's working at a church with has access to kids.
He did not say anything, there was no retaliation, it was simply bye.
It's the truth.
This is the one quote I remember him talking to me about. I may be a pastor, or I may work for God, but I'm not against kids having fun.
Shh. You start telling everybody, it will ruin all the fun. So let's keep it between you and me.
If you're like me and billions of others, by now you most likely have heard of a peculiar little app known as TikTok. From hopeful clips that can bring a smile to those experiencing the worst of days, cute animals that are not like the ones on screen, useful cooking tutorials, comedy sketches, so on and so forth, TikTok is home to so many unique forms of content carefully curated to each user's specific interest. However, as I'm sure you either know or are expecting given that you've clicked on this video, TikTok is far from an innocent app, and lurking within is a dark side of the platform, ridden with controversies and dramas that have plagued the website since its conception. Hidden within plain sight among the search feeds of millions, users have uncovered countless nightmarish creators, ranging from animal lovers with a relationship just a little too close to their own father, individuals who prey upon the innocent for their own sick and twisted desires, actual criminals, half-man, half-wolf hybrids with a specific interest in minors, and many more volatile monsters that would drag the summary on for quite some time. TikTok is home to some of the worst creatures to ever surface online. And with our character of interest today, we will be adding yet another entry into the ever-growing list of reprehensible individuals that can be found on the platform. Allow me to have the honors, or I guess rather dishonors, of introducing you to John Robert Bell, better known by his online username, Jorobe. A man once held as one of the most trustworthy and respectable creators on TikTok, or at least to some. For others, he was just incredibly self-righteous and obnoxious. A youth pastor, Boy Scouts leader, self-proclaimed male feminist, and by night, a connoisseur of young boys, Jorobe was once upon a time a TikTok creator who garnered a following for his rather extreme takes regarding men and women's rights, gearing his approach towards calling out other creators on their takes regarding social and moral issues, with more times than not being seen as the voice of reason in these instances. Garnering a specific influx of followers and additional eyes to his content after having a long public back and forth heated debate with the infamous vegan teacher, Jorobe began to see his status on the platform rise to incredible new heights, with his main and side TikTok accounts accumulating over 5.5 million community members in over just a year of being active on the platform. Upon his newfound fame, Jorobe would begin to speak his mind out into the void on any and all controversies that poisoned the platform, However, with a notable silence in regards to creators who were ousted for predatory behavior involving minors. This would even go on to include a creator who was a close friend of Jorobe, with whom he only made a video denouncing their behavior after much pressure from online users. Aside from the glaring yet often overlooked red flags of Jorobe's hubris, the sky really did appear to be the limit for his career, as time and time again he continuously cemented himself as a recognizable and trustworthy face on the platform. However, as you and I will explore here today, this bright future for Jorobe would come to a screeching halt after numerous young boys came forward with horrific experiences detailing an entirely different person than who TikTok had come to know and love, presenting forth harrowing evidence of a depraved menace who used his status to try and lure young boys miles away from their homes in pursuit of his own twisted and vile fantasies. From promises of one-bedroom Airbnbs across state lines, substances, isolating minors 10 years younger and infecting their minds with the belief that the only person they can ever truly trust is him, allegations of encouraging minors to call him hot or pet names like daddy, highly inappropriate photos and conversations followed by detailed experiences of grooming that spanned across months. The story of John Robert Bell is one of disgust, complex manipulation, and the pathetic cowardice of a man too fearful to face the repercussions of his own actions. But before you and I explore everything I just vaguely summarized, if you'd allow me to briefly introduce myself, I'd be forever grateful. Hi, I'm Wonder, your one-stop shop for calm deep dives on some of the internet's most unsavory individuals online. I upload a new deep dive on a bi-weekly to tri-weekly basis, which recently has been the biggest lie of my life, so if you find you enjoy what you see here today in terms of production itself, feel free to leave me a like and subscribe with the bell notification on so you never miss out on a new story in the future, as well as yours truly. Also, feel free to let me know in the comments what you did or didn't like about today's video so I can work on providing a better viewing experience for you in the future. I'd also like to give a shout out to the individuals on screen, whose videos were where I first heard of Mr. Robe, which in turn provided me with the proper directions needed for bringing this situation together cohesively. I cannot express enough how much credit rightfully goes to these individuals for this story. Without further ado, once more, my name's Wonder, and it is truly phenomenal to have you here today. To my current community, I just want to say I apologize for the delay in this video coming out. I just got done moving, as you can see, and I also had a very large personal loss happen in my life. I'm not going to bore you with details. Nobody passed away, but it required me to step away for a little bit. I wouldn't if I tried to have been able to make any sort of content. I felt I just owed you a little bit of a brief explanation after all the love and support you guys have been showing the channel. But with that said, sit back, relax, admire my beautiful artistic skills, and let's dive right into the story of Jorobe, TikTok's boy-loving creep.
Me educating my followers about what the actual definition of veganism is not mansplaining to female animal rights activists. And one last thing. You used graphic imagery to describe how I get the milk to put in my coffee, but I don't drink coffee anymore. And when I did, I drank it black. Peace out.
What? Bro, what are you talking about, man?
Before we can begin to fully explore the unhinged details surrounding their story, we have to ask ourselves two very pivotal questions. Who exactly is this sad greaseball of a man, and where did he even come from? Important questions, yes, but ones that will require a lot of self-induced headaches to answer. Expanding upon what was briefly touched on prior, Jorobe's first appearance to mainstream media began around early to mid-2020, where he would upload social and political themed content to his TikTok page, primarily surrounding the topics of women's rights and, ironically enough, subjects such as the importance of consent, priding himself on being an advocate for these issues, as well as creating, as he would describe, a safe space for young people online. Jorobe was not a man who was fearful of sharing his thoughts on other creators, and would oftentimes utilize the infamous TikTok duetting feature to call out users who he either found to be problematic or who he fundamentally disagreed with on both a moral and logical level. More often than not, doing this with his iconic level of sass that he intended to come across as him displaying his intellectual prowess on whomever he was debating. Jorobe would continue this trend of advocation-based content, taking upon the mantle of a self-proclaimed male feminist for a short while, before he moved on to a bigger and brighter future for his career. For Jorobe, this came in the form of fearlessly calling out some more notable creators on the platform at the time, earning him a spotlight in numerous online debates. One user in particular that Jorobe caught the attention of was, as mentioned, the infamous TikTok creator known as That Vegan Teacher, aka Katie Karen. Oh, really, ironically enough, that is her name. For those of you who are unfamiliar with this delightful ray of sunshine, That Vegan Teacher is a unique animal rights advocate aligned with organizations such as PETA, recognized primarily for her highly outspoken personality and for her radical ideologies in regards to the relation between human beings and animals, oftentimes through the means of songwriting with viral hits such as her 15-second single, Eating Animals is Wrong, McDonald's.
3, 2, 1, sing! Eating animals is wrong.
Shortly after this song was released, McDonald's stocks plummeted and the chain is no longer in existence today. That Vegan Teacher was, unironically, a pioneer of her craft. She really knew how to hook viewers with her outlandish behavior, which, in turn, despite her notoriety across the internet, has helped her to achieve a following of over 1 million users on her TikTok page, as well as an astounding 5.5 million likes attributed to her content as a whole. Needless to say, whether users liked her or not, she had quite a sizable voice on the platform, something she would soon use to inadvertently facilitate the exponential growth of one of the worst predators to surface on the website. Going off of one of the earliest compilations that can be found of their feud, we can safely assume that somewhere in the time frame during the summer of 2020, a clash of beliefs would arise publicly between Jorobe and That Vegan Teacher. This argument would begin when That Vegan Teacher took to TikTok to discuss what she believed to be the required specifications to become a true vegan in society. This quickly turned into a debate between users about what was and wasn't the correct definition of veganism. And this is where our dear boy John Robert Bell stepped in, brushing off his Webster dictionary with the intent of putting That Vegan Teacher in her place for gatekeeping the vegan community. I truly feel I would be doing you a disservice if I didn't allow you just a brief peek into the clashing of these two brilliant minds. What do you say we take a look?
Eat your vegetables!
Actually, you're not really vegan. A real vegan is somebody who defends animals all the time.
No. As far as I can tell, there is no societal understanding that says that in order to be a vegan, not only do you not have to eat or use animals or animal byproducts, but you also have to be an animal rights activist or actively try to convert people to veganism.
John, thank you so much for mansplaining to us, female animal rights activists.
I don't drink coffee anymore, and when I did, I drank it black. Peace out.
Wow, that was some truly riveting stuff, I guess. What started as a mind-numbing bickering between two privileged Whole Food customers who had nothing better to do with their day quickly devolved into more, well, mind-numbing bickering, but with some insanely out-of-touch takes sprinkled in, primarily made from That Vegan Teacher. Examples of this flawed logic being that she firmly states, in her belief, actions such as breeding animals is no different than, say, a asserting her rationale as farm animals cannot consent to managed reproduction. John, fooling everyone, including himself, did not remain silent on the absurd reasoning and instead responded to That Vegan Teacher by discussing how he found her comparison of raising farm animals to that of real-world to be deplorable and insulting to the victims whose lives have been permanently scarred by such horrific acts, stressing that consent should never be watered down as an arguing point and just how serious such a subject matter is to discuss, even going as far as to demand that That Vegan Teacher publicly apologize to every man, woman, and child who has ever suffered SA.
Dear John,
this is your trigger warning. This video will contain discussions about consent and you know, I typically ignore when people do crap like this with the videos I make or the words that I say, but I will not ignore it this time. I have made so many videos educating my followers about why consent is so important. And for you to make a mockery of consent by comparing how we as humans interact with each other in a safe and productive way to breeding animals is shameful. And posting videos like that just makes it so much harder for us to talk about consent and have people take it seriously. You need to apologize to every adult and child who's experienced with sexual you just compared to breeding animals, and think before you speak.
I want you to keep this clip in mind because hindsight being 2020, this clip will grow to become disgustingly hypocritical as this story progresses. I mean, look at him. He's trying so hard to act passionate about what he's saying as if he isn't planning a trip to Boys R Us later that day. After Jorobe posted his heated response, the situation only went further downhill, as both he and that vegan teacher continued their public back and forth for what has been able to be compiled down into a 17.5-minute video by this user on screen, which is absurd to think about given that at the time, TikTok only allowed for 60-second clips to be uploaded to the platform. Needless to say, users waited with bated breath as the feud between the two creators began to rapidly flood through millions of TikTok feeds, which can also be seen through sheer numbers alone, as the aforementioned compilation rests currently at a whopping 2 million views with 90,000 likes. To put that in a bit of an Americanized perspective, that's over half the likes that can be found on the Wall Street Journal's posting of the most recent presidential debate. That is insane. Despite that vegan teacher having a more noticeable presence on the platform, users were quick to actually side with Jorobe in the comment sections of their videos, causing both their respective communities to rally behind him as he seemingly fact-checked one of TikTok's most obnoxious figures. The more that vegan teacher engaged with Jorobe, the more her account provided exposure to the very person she despised. And the exposure he did receive could not be understated. When the long-winded arguments between the two eventually subsided, both disrespectfully going their own ways, Jorobe was now known as the guy that took on that vegan teacher and walked away an intellectual victor. And so, over the next few months, life would quickly begin to change for Jorobe, as he now finally had a supportive audience that, when he would speak, they would listen eagerly to the wise words he provided. It didn't take long for Jorobe's TikTok page to amass a following of over, at his peak, 4.6 million users, 171 million likes, and over 45 million total channel views, well surpassing that vegan teacher's account by a wide margin. Because of his newfound success and the content he would cover, Jorobe soon became implemented as a voice of reason amongst TikTok, not fearing to openly speak his mind on controversial topics, as well as furthering his reputation for calling out problematic creators without fear of backlash from said creators' communities. This led many of Jorobe's own fans to start looking up to him as a bastion of safety online, dedicating fan pages to the man, as well as being the first line of defense against any creator who either took issue with his content or just simply didn't like him for a wide variety of reasons. Jorobe, on the surface, was not fearful of critique either. Being, as mentioned, a self-described male feminist, Jorobe, as we've established, would oftentimes make content directed at male privilege and what appeared to be defending women's rights. Where some users began to take particular issue with this, though, was when Jorobe began to start making extreme content, joking about how all men should be unalived by women, but also pleading how when this hypothetical scenario plays out, that he should be spared because he's not like the other guys. Good lord, I can smell the Reddit karma emanating off this man. Critics of Jorobe would begin accusing him of not running a pro-feminist account centered around women's rights in an educational and productive way, but instead just being anti-male altogether. When confronted with these kinds of accusations, Jorobe would oftentimes respond with, in my belief, very hypocritical rationales that didn't really address the concerns these users had with him and his ideologies. More often than not, he would merely just deflect any and all criticisms of his content simply as men being fearful of losing their male privilege.
Just imagine being so worried about losing your male privilege that you would call anything that has to do with equality for women anti-men.
Now, I could be entirely wrong, but I don't think telling someone they're fearful of losing their male privilege and that they dislike women's rights is exactly a fair assessment when you're joking that a certain demographic of people shouldn't exist. I feel that's a fair topic of discussion for someone to want to have in order to better understand your rationale for making such statements online. Despite those who would try and bring down the great John Robert Bell through failed criticisms and commentary hit pieces, his presence on the platform held strong, with his community always willing to defend him at a moment's notice. For Jorobe, he had truly reached an untouchable status that is only ever really attributed to a handful of creators. He had everything he could ever need: money, fame, a reputation as TikTok's very own Mr. Rogers. It would appear as if there were no flaws in this picturesque life of Jorobe's. Or, at least it seemed that way at the time. But just as the sky seemed limitless, the weight of Jorobe's double life off camera was about to bring him crashing back down to his putrid reality as a monster with a vile interest in underage boys who looked up to him as a source of trust and friendship. And so, when users started to notice John's unordinary, seemingly intentional evasion of denouncing specifically online predators, the first cracks of John's status as a pillar of the community were soon to show, leaving him anxious with the realization that if he wasn't careful, his ugly truth may be discovered. And little did he know just how close that was to happening.
This video will be about one of the biggest hypocrites I have ever met in my life, Jorobe. John is a disgusting and terrible hypocrite who abuses his platform by using his clout to groom and prey upon underage boys.
Some people even tried to claim that we avoided condemning child grooming and despite the many videos I've already made about both those subjects, I'll say it again for the people who still didn't get it. If you groom somebody or someone, you are disgusting, the scum of the earth.
Welcome back. I hope you have your comically large magnifying glasses ready because it's about to all start going downhill from here. In order to progress our story, we actually have to go back to mid to late 2020, specifically the months of August to October, when the catastrophic downfall of another beloved TikTok creator was unfolding before the eyes of millions. This creator in question was none other than the long-forgotten Gemini Official. For those of you who are unfamiliar or unaware of the extent of this individual's actions, I have a 2-hour in-depth coverage which you can watch at the end of this video if you're interested on going down that nightmarish rabbit hole. But for our purposes here today, I will only briefly summarize that Gemini Official was once a household name creator of sorts that grew in popularity after his viral duet videos with other influencers brought massive attention to his comedy page, causing his account to reach over 3.5 million followers in a relatively short amount of time. What makes his story relevant to that of Jorobe's is during the months of August through October of 2020, numerous creators came forth with allegations and evidence against Gemini Official, accusing him of using his fame and influence to persuade minors into Airbnbs, under the guise of making content and memories with one another. After the evidence stacked against him in a collective manner through the critical help of a creator and former friend of Gemini's, Miss Ramona, Gemini came forth and, in an incredibly deflective manner, admitted to committing a vile and highly illegal crime with a 15-year-old minor in a hotel room. Leading up to Gemini's confession, it wasn't just his victims coming forth with their stories, but also some of TikTok's most notable and influential figures at the time were openly condemning him through the use of their large platforms. However, as it would seem, one particular individual was remaining very silent on the issue at hand, almost as if they were trying to tiptoe out the door of the controversy entirely as a means to avoid speaking on it as a whole. And as I'm sure you're able to guess with your thinking caps, this individual was none other than Jorobe. Now, I will say that normally, it isn't unusual for creators who are uninvolved in a certain drama to not provide their thoughts or coverage of every single issue that arises online, if enough people are already doing so to begin with. Sometimes the controversy is so blatantly condemnable that after so many people have put forth their own callouts, there really isn't much else to add that others haven't already said before. Though, what makes Jorobe's silence on the Gemini Official controversy stand out from the explanation I just provided is that it was Jorobe's metaphorical bread and butter to call out creators who use their platform to commit nefarious actions or bring forth negative ideologies. It was, after all, how he grew in such popularity to begin with. And as someone who proudly advocated for the importance of consent and the respect of SA victims,
I have made so many videos educating my followers about why consent is so important.
His silence on the matter as one of the most well-known creators at the time did not go unnoticed. It didn't take long for users to start asking Jorobe in the comment sections of his videos if he would be making a statement on everything that had been unfolding with Gemini. But, as it would seem, these questions from fans were initially left unanswered. That's when a creator by the name of Papa Gut, a known critic of Jorobe, stepped in and tried to reach out to him so he could get a better understanding as to why he was remaining silent on this particular topic, though Papa Gut was unable to receive a direct explanation for this. Despite this, however, a follower of Papa Gut's channel had, for unrelated reasons, reached out to one of Jorobe's moderators on Discord in an attempt to learn why the two creators had such conflict with one another, as it was common for both Jorobe and Papa Gut at the time to openly disagree with one another's viewpoints on their respective accounts. After only a few brief messages between Papa Gut's follower and the Discord moderator, the topic of Gemini Official was brought up, to which the mod explained that the reason Jorobe had not outwardly spoken on the matter was because, through an anecdotal quote, "Yeah, it's really easy to be like, bad." Which, ironically, this alleged reasoning of Jorobe's is later contradicted by the very same moderator just a few messages later, when they expressed their positive sentiments on Jorobe as a person, stating, quote, "But watching his streams and talking to him one-on-one, I can see that this is just a really nice guy, just trying to help out the community and the people without a voice." After the dust had settled on the Gemini Official situation, leaving him with his account terminated and a permanent place in TikTok infamy, the community of TikTok as a whole began to move on and back into a state of normalcy. And those who had waited in hopes of Jorobe speaking out were left to chalk up his silence as merely a poor judgment call on his end. But, just as things seemed to be normal again, yet another bad faith monster disturbed the peace and was brought front and center of the public eye for condemnation. And once again, this particular user's actions would back Jorobe into a corner. But this time, he would unavoidably have to make a statement or risk losing his platform entirely. This user in question was known as the Calvin Brandle. Now, I will admit when writing this, I had no idea who the Calvin Brandle was, but to offer a very brief set of cliff notes, Calvin Brandle was another TikTok creator who made content akin to that of Jorobe's, with around 260,000 followers at the time of his exposure. His cancellation came after it had become public knowledge that Calvin had attempted to sexually assault a mutual friend of both he and Jorobe's. In an apology video uploaded to TikTok, he stated his rationale behind this was he had let the power of having an online following get to his head, leaving him in a mindset that he could do what he wanted and get away with it.
I'm gonna come back to TikTok. It wasn't putting me in a good spot. I felt that with TikTok my ego was super inflated and I felt like I was invincible, I was unstoppable, I couldn't make any mistakes, and it resulted in me making the biggest mistake that I think I'll ever make.
Embarrassingly pathetic behavior that I'm sure was secretly hitting a little too close to home for Jorobe. What ties this creator with John, though, is that he and Calvin were also close friends in each other's lives, posing in Instagram photos with one another, and oftentimes making collaborative works for their own respective TikTok accounts as self-proclaimed male feminists. Which is incredibly ironic to call yourself after you try to force yourself onto not only a woman but also your friend because you have moderate TikTok clout. If you'd like a full breakdown of this situation, I highly suggest you view Papa Gut's coverage of this in his video titled, "Another TikTok Predator, the Calvin Brandle." I'm not sure what part of this story involves predatory behavior specifically, as in a separate video, Papa Gut states that the mutual friend was around 20, so if anyone can clarify on that down below, I'd appreciate it. To my knowledge though, given what Jorobe goes on to clarify in a clip we will watch here in just a moment, it seems that there may have been some grooming involved with their mutual friend for some time. But, fast forwarding to the part that's relevant for us here today, fans and passive users alike were well aware of the public friendship between both Jorobe, Calvin, and the victim. Therefore, this time, they were not going to take no for an answer when demanding Jorobe use his platform to not only speak upon his friend's horrific actions, but to openly condemn both grooming and predatory behavior as a whole. Having been left now with realistically no choice, Jorobe opted to sensibly throw his friend, who was actually a reflection of himself, to the wolves in a response uploaded to TikTok, denouncing the actions of his former friend, as well as to stand with the victim, who, might I remind you, is someone Jorobe claimed to be a friend of. I want us to take a look at this video of Jorobe's together, well informed that what he is about to say is complete and utter hypocrisy, and that he's forcing himself to do this with the sole intent of maintaining his image online. Again, doing so with the audacity to say he is doing this to not only support a victim, but also his friend. I will say this clip I could only find in one place and it was over someone else's commentary, so I've had to cut it down, so if it seems a bit scuffed due to my splicing, that's why. But with that in mind, allow me to go ahead and play this clip for you now.
I was planning on taking a break from posting on TikTok, but I wanted to talk about my friend Aaron. Both Aaron and I felt forced to share our stories of surviving sexual assault with the millions of people on this app, and so we did. And while many people showed their support both publicly and privately to us, there are also people who decided to take advantage of the situation for their own gain. Some people decided to call us liars, but I believe her, and she believes me. Some people decided to make jokes at our expense. But our trauma is not your punchline. Some people even tried to claim that we avoided condemning child grooming and sexual assault. And despite the many videos I've already made about both those subjects, and the fact that I said that I still have effects from what happened to me from when I was 8, I'll say it again for the people who still didn't get it. If you groom somebody or sexually assault someone, you are disgusting, the scum of the earth. Me and Aaron are not robots, and we should not be required to talk about anything that we do not want to talk about. And if you don't like that, unfollow me. I stand with Aaron, and I hope you do too.
But what I find so irritating about this video is how much forced conviction he adds to his closing statement when he says, and I quote, "I'll say it again, if you groom somebody, you are disgusting, the scum of the earth."
If you groom somebody or someone, you are disgusting, the scum of the earth.
The irony here is just, palpable. Despite criticisms from creators like Papa God, this explanation provided forth by Jorobe was well received by his audience, and also acted as a clarification for his silence during the Gemini official controversy. That clarification being that he did not want to discuss such a sensitive subject online, especially one that he could personally relate with. Which again, I must remind you, given his prior actions and statements, Jorobe picks and chooses when to stand behind that sentiment.
I have made so many videos educating my followers about why consent is so important, and posting videos like that just makes it so much harder for us to talk about consent and have people take it seriously.
I'm sure for Jorobe, had he truly just been a simple creator with humble intentions, like he was able to portray to the world through his content, he most likely would be sighing in relief at this point. But I can only imagine the opposite with what we're about to discuss. His mind had to be racing back and forth, leaving him a nervous wreck behind the scenes with the question echoing in his mind, what if everyone knew? As the days turned into weeks, this hypothetical question inched ever so close to finding an answer. And on one fateful day, Jorobe's world would come crashing down when a user by the name of Dillg16, or simply referred to as Dylan, would suddenly emerge on TikTok with a video accusing Jorobe of having attempted to groom him over the course of many months, leading to numerous other young individuals, many who were minors at the time, coming forward to corroborate Dylan's experiences with horrific stories of their own. From consistent details alleging of promises of one-bedroom Airbnbs, underage drinking, isolation, gaslighting, inappropriate photos and messages, and so much more. It was now Jorobe's turn to be on the receiving end of relentless scrutiny, much like his friend and those he had conveniently avoided speaking on in the past. Jorobe's beloved audience, as well as the community of TikTok, would soon find themselves not only disgusted with the man they looked up to with admiration, but met with the realization that this behavior may have potentially reached beyond not just TikTok, but into his offline career as well, which happened to consist of roles specifically involving young children. To say the least, as Jorobe's secret life was soon to become public, things were about to take a complete and utter turn for the worst.
John first followed me whenever I had about 30,000 followers.
It all starts about 7 months ago when he follows me back.
So I met this creator almost a year ago.
So Jorobe followed me when I didn't have a lot of followers.
He started to send me links to one-bedroom Airbnbs.
And he offered to buy me a room with him.
He would then make comments and Zooms with a lot of the other kids who had experienced this.
And then he abused and misused that trust and tried to get me to do things and was sending me things that I didn't want.
And then I looked back on me and John's relationship and I saw what he wanted from me all along.
I thought I was the only one until recently.
If you are part of what happened with John, please come out with your story. We need you.
Welcome back, so great to have you here. It got cold where I live for the first time in a trillion years, so I hope you like my funny hat. Wasting no time in providing you with a brief recap of what we just discussed moments ago, let's dive right into this section with the gloves off. As mentioned, on one unassuming Wednesday in mid-2021, a user by the name of Dillg16 caught the attention of TikTok when a video of theirs surfaced online of them calling out Jorobe for what was months of predatory behavior and what can only be described as textbook grooming. Dylan revealed that for the last several months, Jorobe had been a participant in an online group chat consisting of numerous minors nearly 10 to 12 years younger than him, and that he would frequently join Zoom calls of theirs, eventually leading to a point where Jorobe was an active and reoccurring person in their life, and to many, a close friend whom they could trust. However, with Jorobe being 26, going on 27 at the time, as well as having a strong influential status with millions of followers, I shouldn't have to explain where the very obvious power dynamic lied within this situation. The allegations Dylan presents in his video we are about to watch here in just a few moments is one that personally struck me a bit, because as it progresses, you can really start to see that Dylan is just a kid who, unfortunately, like many of us have done before, trusted the wrong person, and almost lost his friends due to the isolation and gaslighting that Jorobe imposed on him in an effort to keep Dylan to himself, hoping one day that he could lure Dylan to an Airbnb for his 18th birthday and do God only knows what to him under the influence. Together, you and I, let's officially meet Dylan, hear his story, and afterwards, let me know down below your thoughts on what he has to say.
This video will be about one of the biggest hypocrites I have ever met in my life, Jorobe. Here's a picture of him if you don't know him by his name. John is a disgusting and terrible hypocrite who abuses his platform by using his clout to groom and prey upon underage boys. He has done this to multiple people, including me. John first followed me whenever I had about 30,000 followers and joined my live stream and asked for my Snapchat, so I gave it to him. After Snapchatting for a few weeks, I invited him to a Zoom call with me and my other TikTok friends, which we did daily. After about a week of John joining the Zooms, he asked me if I wanted to get an Airbnb with him on my 18th birthday, which was over 3 months away. At the time, I thought it was a good idea, and initially, it was supposed to be with other people. This is him asking me who we should invite. After a few more days, I realized those were not his true intentions. He started to send me links to one-bedroom Airbnbs, and he offered to purchase me alcohol if I went. And this is him talking about the one-bedroom, and I was like, could we find one for like 2? That would be better. As you can see, he immediately changed the subject. A little over a week goes by, and then I decide to invite one of my IRL friends to the Zoom, and this is what John sent me. He knew that I did not want to get the Airbnb, so he thought if he invited one of my IRL friends, I would want to go. That's him asking when he was going to turn 18. He continued to ask me about the Airbnb for months until he just finally stopped. During one of the Zooms with all of my TikTok friends, John thought it would be a good idea to have us all take a BDS score test and send him our results so he could see our. Keep in mind, the youngest was 15 years old and the oldest were 19, and there were only 2 19-year-olds and everybody else was 17 and below. There were 12 of us. A few months later, in the Zooms, my friends would go into separate FaceTime calls, and it felt like me and John were always left out, and he tried to convince me that they were talking about me and that they weren't my real friends and that he was my only real friend. It worked, and I believed him. A few days later, I got a FaceTime call from all of my friends, and I answered, and in those FaceTime calls during the Zooms, they were talking about how John was grooming me, and whenever they confronted me with this, I was very defensive. A few hours later, I called back and talked to them, and I finally realized that John was grooming me. I decided to cut John off and not confront him about anything. I didn't say anything for the past 8 months because I thought I was the only one until recently I found out that there are multiple people that John has groomed. John does not deserve to have any type of platform because if he does, he will continue this behavior and will not stop preying on teenagers. He's a disgusting and terrible person.
I had to do a lot of research for like the actual terminologies of grooming when making this video because I didn't doubt Dylan's story by any means, but I also wanted to see if any of Jorobe's patterns lined up, and man, it's depressing because reading into this story and looking into it, grooming just seems like such a subtle, long-term mind game that you really just don't recognize you're a victim of until it's like far too late. I don't know, man, it's just like, these are just kids. After hearing Dylan's rather tragic story just now, I find that there are some key takeaways that we should discuss and look at further. This will be used as it'll go on to help us compare and contrast similar experiences that we will discuss further in this video. As Dylan expressed, he begins his video with accusing Jorobe of being a disgusting hypocrite. that much like individuals such as Gemini Official and his dear friend, the Calvin Brandel, uses his status as a TikTok celebrity to lure young boys, where he would then prey upon and groom them, citing that his experience is just one of many of those who were victims of this unforgivable behavior.
I didn't say anything for the past 8 months because I thought I was the only one until recently I found out that there are multiple people that John has groomed.
Dylan goes on to say that he first encountered Jorobe when he had roughly 30,000 followers. Jorobe had followed his TikTok account one unassuming day, only to thereafter join a live stream of Dylan's, inquiring in his chat about the possibility of receiving Dylan's Snapchat username so he could continue their conversation offline. Seeing no issue with this at the time, Dylan obliged and provided Jorobe with his Snapchat account username. After a few weeks of back and forth dialogue, Dylan felt that both he and Jorobe had grown close enough to invite him to a Zoom call consisting of his other creator friends. These calls and conversations proceeded daily for about a week or so, before one night, Jorobe proposed a friendly idea for both he and Dylan that he was sure to find exciting. You see, as mentioned, Dylan's birthday was 3 months away, and Jorobe, being such a thoughtful friend to his minor companion, was willing to do just about anything to ensure that he had a memorable 18th birthday. So, with his new friend's interest absolutely in mind, Jorobe suggested getting an Airbnb for this special occasion. Dylan, with no reason to find this alarming, was on board with this idea, but under the impression that this birthday would naturally consist of other people and not just a 27-year-old washed-up male feminist. I don't think anyone would particularly dream of their 18th birthday going quite like that. To provide evidence of this assumption, Dylan presented, as we can see on screen, a text exchange that reads as the following. Jorobe begins this message by saying, "You've been doxxed," to which Dylan replies with, "Good." If I had to make an educated guess here, I would assume that whatever was stated prior most likely consisted of Dylan providing some form of personal information, such as his name, address, etc. For what particular reason this could be, I'm unsure, but if I again had to assume, it most likely was related to the Airbnb. Continuing, Jorobe replies with, "Good, deal with it." So, who else are we inviting? Not sure, it doesn't matter to me. Whoever you want. It's for your birthday though. I'll see if Hannah is interested. Do you care more about the location or the house? Honestly, anyone would be fine. I'm not that picky. I feel the closer to West Virginia, the better. Probably like not across the country. This text exchange proved that not only were Dylan's claims of an Airbnb true, but that it was Jorobe who actually brought up the idea of inviting others on the trip initially, naturally leaving Dylan to assume that other people would be arriving on his birthday. It is in my own personal belief that what I think Jorobe was doing here was testing the waters with Dylan to see if he was open to the idea of traveling to meet him at all, before moving the goalpost further and further until he knew just how willing Dylan was to be around him in privacy. After a few more days with the idea of an Airbnb trip on the table, Dylan says that he soon came to the realization that an exciting 18th birthday was most likely not Jorobe's true intentions, and that he was eager to make this trip happen for himself for whatever reason. Jorobe was quick to start subtly sending Dylan links to one-bedroom Airbnbs, rather than ones for multiple guests as he had done previously. And as the conversation between the two continued, they soon grew to become inappropriate in nature, with Jorobe now allegedly sweetening the deal with promises of alcohol, so long as Dylan followed through with his plan.
He started to send me links to one-bedroom Airbnbs, and he offered to purchase me alcohol if I went, and this is him talking about the one-bedroom.
To back these claims, Dylan provided the following on-screen text exchanges, which I will be reading for you now. As we can see, the conversation begins midway with Jorobe telling Dylan, "Look in the chat, in case we can't find any friends." "I like that one too," Dylan responds. "And it's cheap," replies Jorobe. "It's very cheap, like $100 cheaper than the other places, and then we have lots of money to do fun things. But there would only be room for the two of us." "Yeah, that is true. Maybe one would like 2 rooms. I just realized the ocean is gonna be freezing, so we don't need to be near the beach. For real, I forgot about that. But we're still getting a hot tub." This level of premeditation here is equally astonishing as it is just disgusting. Jorobe's goal here was to, allegedly, persuade an impressionable minor out of state, illegally provide him with alcohol, allegedly, share a hot tub alone together, and then stay the night in a house with one bedroom to share. I cannot express how ominous such calculated actions are, and hearing them in hindsight from the perspective of a victim, it's rather chilling in my opinion. For a grown man to unironically say to a minor, "Oh, there would be so much money left for us to do fun things, but oh, unfortunately we'd have to share a one bedroom together." You're a grown f***ing man. It's just so outrageously pathetic. Dylan points out that when asking Jorobe about the possibility of finding a 2-bedroom Airbnb, the message is ignored entirely, with Jorobe changing the subject back to where the two of them should stay. A little over a week of this pre-planning continued, before Jorobe asked Dylan about when his friend Noah turned 18 as well, as can be seen here on screen, expressing a desire for his friend to come along on their trip if they are a legal adult by that time. According to Dylan, he was pestered by Jorobe for quite some time about the Airbnb in the months leading up to his 18th birthday. But when he seemed to not be getting anywhere with the plan, he eventually gave up, and the odd behavior appeared to finally have subsided. However, fast forward 2 months later, and Jorobe's inappropriate behavior would allegedly reappear once again. Dylan alleged that during a Zoom call one night with his friends, Jorobe would seemingly out of nowhere propose the idea of everyone on call taking an infamous related test so he could learn all about the intimate desires of the members on said call. Dylan notes here that the oldest participants of the call were 2 19-year-olds and that the other members were 17 and younger, citing that in total there were 12 people on the call, meaning that Jorobe had proposed this highly inappropriate idea to over 10 individual minors.
During one of the Zooms with all of my TikTok friends, John thought it would be a good idea to have us all take a BDS score test and send him our results so he could see our. Keep in mind, the youngest was 15 years old and the oldest were 19, and there were only 2 19-year-olds and everybody else was 17 and below. There were 12 of us.
Once more, I have to remind you that this man was almost 30. With a few more passing months of this increasingly unacceptable behavior of Jorobe's, Dylan's friends, who had been watching the two grow closer over time, had begun, out of concern and their own discomfort, to create separate Zoom calls of their own in an effort to exclude and remove Jorobe from their friend group entirely. Seizing the opportunity that had presented itself before him, Jorobe was now in a position to spend more time with Dylan than he ever had before, therefore providing him with the means to further isolate Dylan from his friends by gaslighting him with lies that the reason they were spending less time with him was because they were speaking ill of Dylan behind closed doors, and that they, unlike him, were not his true friends, nor did they have his best interest at heart.
A few months later, in the Zooms, my friends would go into separate FaceTime calls and it felt like me and John were always left out, and he tried to convince me that they were talking about me and that they weren't my real friends and that he was my only real friend.
An unfortunate, yet highly predictable tactic with groomers. Heartbreakingly enough, and understandably so, Dylan admits that Jorobe's lies had in fact worked on him. Jorobe had proven who he could really trust now. However, only a few days later, after having come to terms with this information, Dylan's friends, who had seemed to have left him with Jorobe on his own, would suddenly FaceTime him one afternoon as a group, where this mistaken perception was proven to be quite the opposite. It was here in this FaceTime call where Dylan's friends sat him down and expressed that it was their collective belief that after witnessing the constant inappropriate behavior of Jorobe over the last several months, that he was in reality not Dylan's friend, and instead was actually being groomed by the beloved creator. Dylan, recalling Jorobe's lies, grew defensive of these accusations being made against his close friend. After all, why would he believe them? They were the ones who stopped hanging out with him. Jorobe had never once stepped away. It was obviously him who was looking out for Dylan and not the other way around. After the FaceTime call ended, after what seemed to be an attempt at a failed intervention, Dylan sat with what his friends had said for the next several hours, presumably going over everything that had transpired over the last several months. And that's when the realization hit, that Jorobe had been using him the entire time. It was all a plan, and his friend, who he had grown close with, had never truly existed. Dylan later called back his friends, and after a second discussion with an open mind towards their concerns, Dylan too arrived at the conclusion that Jorobe had been grooming him since the very beginning. Now seeing reality for what it was, Dylan did not hesitate to cut off all contact from Jorobe, ceasing any and all communications from that day forward. He explains that the reason he had not come forward with his story until recently was due to the fact that he was under the assumption that he was Jorobe's first and last victim. But when he discovered that other people had fallen for the same scheme, he felt the need to speak up, which, might I add, is an incredibly admirable thing to do. Dylan states in the conclusion of his video, he believes that Jorobe should be deplatformed, citing his reasoning for this being that, given his widespread popularity, it leaves the door wide open for him to do this to virtually anyone unfortunate enough to misplace their trust in him. And he was far from alone in this shared sentiment. Only a short while after Dylan's video was posted to TikTok, another creator by the name of Coco came forward with their own story, accusing Jorobe of having attempted to groom them as well. This user would upload a detailed 3-part story to their account, where they would describe how Jorobe would ask them personal questions such as where do they live, do they partake in any substances despite not being the legal age to do so, as well as other sinister inquiries such as, once again, offers of the illegal purchasing of alcohol and if their parents would allow them to travel out of state alone. An incredibly similar series of accusations reflective to that of Dylan's experiences. Together, let's you and I take a look at Coco's story, and then reconvene afterwards to share our thoughts, before moving on to the accounts of other victims. I will state a disclaimer that these clips, unedited, are roughly about 5 minutes total, so I've condensed down what I can, while still providing you what I feel to be as much information as possible. With that said, let's go ahead and roll the clip.
Hello TikTok. I'm going to be talking about my story of this man right here, and if it gets taken down for harassment or bullying, I will be livid. It all starts about 7 months ago when he follows me back. I almost instantly messaged him saying, "Hey dude, I'm a big fan. I can't believe you followed me back. Do you think you'd want to play Minecraft sometime?" Because I asked most of my new mutuals if they wanted to play Minecraft because I was addicted to the game at the time. He hit me back nearly instantly with a, "Oh, sure, of course, here's my Snapchat and here's my Xbox tag." As to which I added both of them because I wanted new people to play Minecraft with and I looked up to him. And here's where things started. That night, me and John played for around 6 hours total on one Minecraft world and got pretty damn far in it. And we both were having a lot of fun. We both stayed up late talking, and we did this for the next week. We stayed up like till 2 to 4 a.m. talking to each other and playing Minecraft, and it was great. I could not have asked for more. And I didn't suspect a thing. I figured we were just friends talking, playing Minecraft together, because that's what friends did. And I'd say around 3 weeks later, he started asking like different questions, like, what state do you live in? And do your parents let you travel? And do you like to travel? And and I gave him full honesty. And as to which I do, or I did. And I didn't talk much about it, but I trusted him enough to tell him. So I told him everything. And then he answered, "Great, thanks for telling me." And then stopped talking to me for about 4 days, which was irregular because we talked like every day. And then one day he messaged me and went, "Hey, can I FaceTime you?" As to which we FaceTimed. And we and him talked about those TikTok conventions that used to happen once a year where you'd go to and like talk to people and the big content creators you like to follow. And he asked if I wanted to go to one with him. I agreed because that was great. I would have loved to. And he offered to buy me a room with him or like an apartment or whatever it was at the time. And I was getting ready to go. Things were great. It was wonderful. He offered to buy me alcohol like before. We never went. I'm going to specify. We never went. But he offered to buy me drinks there. And this is the one quote I remember him talking to me about. "I may be a pastor, or I may work for God, but I'm not against kids having fun." I should have realized it right there. Afterwards, he basically ghosted me for a while. He stopped talking to me. But then one day he messaged me saying, "Hey, would you like to play Fortnite with me and Dylan?" And that's how I met Dylan, as to which I am thankful, because, well, he's the one who helped us all realize this. And after that night, I started kind of seeing John's weird behaviors. He started sending me shirtless pictures of him working out, him in bed, texting me really late at night, asking me a bunch of weird questions. And at that point, I stopped talking to him. He stopped talking to me, I stopped caring about him. So one day, he just straight up goes, "Do you not like me anymore?" So after that, I kind of got set off. I basically was like, "Well, you stopped talking to me, so I don't know." And he goes, "Well, darn, I bought that game you wanted me to. Do you want me to play sometime?" And I left him on it, but I never talked to him. And then we stopped talking entirely. He stopped talking to me. And then Dylan made his video. And then I looked back on me and John's relationship, and I saw what he wanted from me all along. I was emotionally damaged. That's why it's taken me so long to make this video. It's because I couldn't grasp the fact that all he wanted was me for my body. If you are part of what happened with John, please come out with your story. We need you.
As you and I just saw, there are quite a few things to discuss in regards to Coco's story, so let's waste no time in doing so. Coco describes how 7 months prior, they had first encountered Jorobe when they followed their TikTok page, leading Coco to recognize the rising internet star and to provide them back with a follow. Upon doing so, Coco reached out to Jorobe, letting him know that she was surprised to see him following her account and that she was a big fan of his content, going on to ask Jorobe if he would be interested in playing Minecraft with her in the near future. Jorobe, recognizing the opportunity, wasted no time in accepting this offer, providing Coco with both their gamertag as well as their Snapchat username. Coco would then proceed to have reoccurring gaming sessions with Jorobe that lasted for hours at a time for the next several weeks. Undoubtedly, an unhealthy and an alarming amount of time for a grown man to be spending playing video games alone with a minor. But, through no fault of their own, Coco saw this as harmless fun with a creator they looked up to. Realistically, how could they view it any differently at such an impressionable age? According to Coco, it took only about 3 weeks of casual gaming for Jorobe's behavior to start making a subtle yet noticeable difference. This came in the form of more directly personal questions, as we mentioned prior, like their state of residence, do they partake in substances, and do their parents let them travel alone? Once more, in their eyes, with no red flags to be found, Coco answered these questions truthfully. Oddly enough though, despite getting the answers he most likely was looking for, instead of pursuing further, Jorobe suddenly backed off for the time being, thanking Coco for the information they provided before briefly stopping all contact with her for the next several days. According to her, this was unlike him, as the two had a consistent streak of speaking to one another every day. But just as he disappeared, like clockwork, Jorobe reappeared 4 days later as if nothing had happened. This time, wanting more than a few gaming sessions and the occasional Snapchat, Jorobe asked Coco if they now would be open to the idea of FaceTiming one another. Coco obliged, and during their FaceTime, Jorobe started putting the information he had learned about her to use, now testing the waters to see their thoughts on out-of-state events such as TikTok conventions that would require travel as well as overnight stays in Airbnbs, asking further if Coco would be interested in going to one of these conventions, just the two of them, alone. Eager and still under the assumption that a large notable creator had taken interest in them not only as a friend, but as a TikToker as well, Coco found the proposition to be a genuine no-brainer. Further enticing the idea, much like how Jorobe had done for Dylan, Jorobe allegedly offered to purchase the two a stay at a one-bedroom Airbnb, and as well as to supply Coco with alcohol if they could convince their parents to let them travel out of state to meet them. Anecdotally quoted as saying, "I may work for God, but I'm not against kids having fun."
And this is the one quote I remember him talking to me about. "I may be a pastor, or I may work for God, but I'm not against kids having fun."
You know, I wouldn't exactly define fun kid activities as illegally providing minors with the means to become intoxicated several states away from their parents, where the only adult supervision is a crusty 27-year-old who has a bad habit of sending revealing photos of himself in his underoos to a couple kiddos. Allegedly. I'm getting ahead of myself, more on that later, but you go ahead and make an appointment with your therapist. Coco did not hesitate, and they were on board with the idea of this trip. So much so that they had already begun to pack when, yet again, Jorobe would perform his best Houdini impression and vanish for another extended period of time, leading to this plan of his to, thankfully, never come to fruition. But, just like before, Jorobe would soon reappear as if he had not been planning a highly questionable trip for the last several weeks. And as it would happen to be, in hindsight, Jorobe's leave of absence would start to make more sense and fill in a lot of missing gaps, as he had come back to ask Coco if they would be interested in playing Fortnite with their new friend, Dylan. Jorobe, as it was revealed, had been keeping busy in his spare time. But there was a slight misstep in Jorobe's plan that he didn't see coming when he attempted to merge his two sickening projects together as one. That tiny flaw being, people know how to talk with one another. Unfortunately for Jorobe and his small little brain, around the time he had introduced Coco to his other victim, Dylan's friends had already helped him see the light of day in regards to the manipulative creep that Jorobe was. Having now a clear perspective on his situation, Dylan began to reach out to Coco as a means to help them get away from Jorobe's devious intentions that had been veiled as a trustworthy friendship. And it was through these efforts that Coco was able to see Jorobe's actions over the last several months as not kind gestures, but highly disturbing and off-putting.
But then one day he messaged me saying, "Hey, would you like to play Fortnite with me and Dylan?" And that's how I met Dylan, as to which I am thankful, because, well, he's the one who helped us all realize this.
Jorobe, being the brainlet of a man that he is, was not aware that what he was doing was now becoming more and more obvious by the day. And so, still believing he had the situation under control, he began to start sending Coco inappropriate photos of himself working out, shirtless, in bed, as well as beginning to send text into the late hours of the night. Coco, with Dylan's words echoing in their mind, was now able to see what he was doing here, causing her to immediately stop any and all further engagement. With many passing nights presumably standing in his boxers like a dweeb, teardrops falling onto his phone screen that illuminated an inbox of young boys who had left him on red, Jorobe found himself in need of an explanation for the pain in his heart that had been left by Coco's silence. Mustering up his courage, Jorobe finally put his big boy pants back on and sent a direct message to Coco allegedly asking,
"Do you not like me anymore?"
No. Coco, not taking kindly to the desperate grown man in their DMs, for lack of better terms, kinda just told Jorobe how it was. That she was creeped out by him and no longer felt comfortable talking or frolicking through the fields of Minecraft with him. This led to a failed last-ditch effort to reel her back in, where Jorobe pathetically tried to guilt-trip Coco by saying that they were saddened to hear that they no longer wanted to speak to them because he had just picked up a game that Coco had wanted the two of them to play in the past. And it would be such a shame if he had to play the really cool game all alone.
And he goes, "Well, darn, I bought that game you wanted me to. Do you want me to play sometime?"
Coco, finally at their true end with Jorobe, saw right through the puppy dog eyes and ceased all communications once and for all, officially blocking him permanently. Therefore, with no more wiggle room for their sick intentions, Jorobe had no choice but to give up and go his own way. Naturally being torn up about the realization that their supposed friend was nothing more than a twisted degenerate who sought to use their trust to their own benefit, Coco ended their story by encouraging others who may have had similar experiences to come forward and help further shine light on the beloved creator's true intentions. And with this call to action, it didn't take long for more voices to emerge online. Two more users soon after would post to TikTok their own recollection of events regarding Jorobe, anecdotally corroborating the existence of the alleged group chat, as well as similarities such as the pattern of offering substances, Airbnb visits, guilt tripping, and alluding to not safe for work images being shared. The two users, one named Melania and another who, despite my best efforts, I was unable to find a concrete name for, have stories that align in such a way that I will be combining their clips into one segment. This is to avoid the needless exposition of dissecting two separate yet very similar retelling of events, like we have already done with Dylan and Coco's stories, which was needed to establish a clear, in-depth pattern of behavior. With that said, let's go ahead together and take a look at what these two individuals have to say. And afterwards, let me know your thoughts down below on their story.
Hi, I'm Melina. A lot of you guys won't know me, obviously, but I wanted to come on here, especially as Papa Gut and I Speak are going to be posting their videos, and talk a little bit about my story with Mr. J. I don't really feel comfortable saying his name given his platform and everything, and I wanted to talk, like I said, about my experiences and my stories. So I met this creator almost a year ago through a group chat of kids from the age of 13 to around 18, maybe one or two kids who were 19. There was a very large power dynamic even then, where he obviously was not only the largest platform in the group chat, but the oldest by almost 10, 11 years, because he was 26 at the time and I was 16. Jay and I started Snapchatting because I was like, oh, he's cool, and we started talking, and then a lot of you guys will remember when there was the Papa Gut and other situations with Jay where he was called out, and Jay and I had been on a call when that whole thing was very large, and he was essentially trauma dumping onto me to try to kind of keep me in what I think was his grasp. And alongside that, he would then make comments and Zooms with a lot of the other kids who had experienced this, making innuendos about certain people or just himself, and trying to get us to call him hot, and just a lot of other scary, uncomfortable things that should not happen. Alongside that, he'd also make promises about getting Airbnbs and meeting up with us, and alongside that, he'd promise alcohol and hot tubs, and he made me believe that like the whole group was horrible people who hated him and I, and it was really just not good. These are just my experiences. You'll probably hear other people's experiences as well.
Originally, I wasn't going to make this video about Jorobe, but a lot of stuff has come up in the past couple days that I feel like I almost have to. It's gotten to the point where so many people are DMing us and telling us stories about their experiences with Jorobe too, so I feel like I want to help back those up and be able to have this guy finally gone. And if you don't know the situation with Jorobe, pretty much what happened is that a bunch of minors. And a lot of the people that are DMing us are saying that they thought they were the only ones, and so did the rest of us. I can't go into specific details about what happened between me and Jorobe because it is quite not safe for work, and TikTok will immediately take it down. But I'll try and give as much information as I can without this getting taken down. So Jorobe followed me when I didn't have a lot of followers, and he had around, I think, 300 to 400k. I would go check to get the exact time and numbers that he did have, but unfortunately he's deactivated all 3 of his accounts on social media, so I can't see the DMs. We didn't talk too much, we DM'd and commented on each other's stuff, sometimes duetted each other, and I thought we were friends. Then 2 days before my birthday, he DMs me and asked me for my Snapchat. And around that time was the time where he started to actually get pretty big on TikTok. So of course I added him because I looked up to the guy and he was posting the same stuff as me, and he was doing really well on TikTok. And then my birthday came around and he wished me a happy birthday. And then a little bit after that is when he came out to me personally before he actually came out on TikTok. And so I saw that as a sign of trust, and so I really trusted the guy. And then he misused that trust and tried to get me to do things and was sending me things that I didn't want. And I felt like I couldn't say no because, I don't know, I felt like I trusted him, and then I felt bad for him because of all the shit he was getting on TikTok and all the hate that he was getting. So please, if anybody you know that is in contact with Jorobe, please stop talking to him, and please make sure that people you know are safe.
As we just unfortunately saw, these 2 users' stories, as mentioned, are disturbingly similar in nature to that of both Coco and Dylan's experiences. The MO, in my belief, is too similar across all of their accounts to just merely be some form of targeted cancellation against Jorobe. Again and again, we heard allegations of Jorobe's behavior in this group chat full of minors and very young adults, consisting of tactics such as special treatments, gaslighting and isolation, guilt-tripping as a means to receive compliments on his appearance, themed humor or innuendos directed at either himself or other members, which, might I add, is a subtle yet not so subtle way of bringing up the topic to test the waters, and last but far from least, trauma dumping as a means to keep those he was targeting from leaving his side. All of these actions, described by every victim who had come forward, collectively displayed the sad, pathetic nature of Jorobe, exposing the pitiful lengths this man would go to over the course of several months just to try and wrap his finger around whoever would mistakenly see him as a source of trust and friendship. Upon these users' statements being posted to TikTok, Jorobe's victims would come together to release a Google document detailing everything they had stated in their own respective videos, bringing a close to what could only be described in hindsight as a nightmare series of events that, fortunately, was now laid out before the public eye. It appeared, at the time, as if every voice had now finally spoken, and all that was left was for Jorobe to answer for the horrific series of allegations stacked against him. Or at least it seemed that way. But just when you thought you couldn't cross your fingers enough, hoping that things could not get even worse, they unfortunately do. Shortly after the creation of the Google document that detailed the horrific actions these individuals had gone through, an anonymous user reached out to the aforementioned creator, Papa Gut, with a direct message describing their own sickening encounters with the world-renowned male feminist. Despite wishing to remain anonymous, this user's allegations not only aligned in similarity with those we just discussed, but they also had incredibly disturbing photos sent by Jorobe to back their claims. This direct message, as can be seen on screen, I will read to you now in its entirety. Hey, I saw your video and thought I should come out and say my experience. I ran a small fan account for Jorobe on Instagram, and he even at one point followed me. I slide up on his stories from time to time, and he eventually asked for my Snapchat. I was so excited because he told me that no one else had his Snapchat, and he made me promise to not give anyone it or not tell anyone what we talk about. Everything was fine for a while, but conversations got really weird and he sent me a lot of dirty pictures. After he sent me the first, he would just snap me all day, showing his private area, even when we would have normal conversations. He said he would handcuff me to his bed and asked if I was a... Luckily, because I'm not as naive as a lot of people my age, I immediately started screenshotting most of these pictures without him knowing using a hack. I was also 14 at the time. He didn't even bother to ask how old I was or for any form of identification, but he would call me a baby a lot and would try to force me to call him daddy. I'm sending you this and the screenshots, nothing else. I don't want to be in any videos or talk about it any further. You can send this to any of your friends or anyone else that may be able to help get this off the internet, but I don't want to speak about it any further. Please believe me. To which Papa Gut replied with, I'm so sorry, I believe you. After this message had been sent to Papa Gut, this anonymous user proceeded to attach 4 highly inappropriate screenshots of selfies that Jorobe had allegedly sent them. I will be both describing and reading the captions of these screenshots for you now. Do note, for obvious reasons, these images will have to remain censored. As depicted on screen, the first image we have is of Jorobe in what appears to be his underwear, taking a mirror selfie with the caption, God, these trunks look good on me. And our second image, we have Jorobe capturing a revealing upshot of his briefs in response to an unknown conversation, which can be seen by the vague caption that reads simply as, yeah. We have Jorobe once again taking a mirror selfie in his briefs, slightly lifting up his shirt with a caption, damn, this underwear makes my look good. And lastly, we have another upshot of Jorobe's briefs with the caption, now I fall asleep. I would like to remind you that this anonymous user claimed to have only been 14 at the time Jorobe had sent them these highly inappropriate and unacceptable images. And I would also like to make note that these are the only documented not safe for work images that we know of, but not the only ones that have been anecdotally referenced. Recall that the other victims mentioned prior had alleged to have received similar images to what we just looked at, leaving me to wonder what other deplorable forms of evidence surrounding Jorobe have been lost to time, witnessed only by the unwilling recipients of this alleged group chat. Now with the entirety of TikTok attentively focused on Jorobe, users were quick to look into his personal life to learn any and everything about this accused monster, eventually leading to a few keen eyes to discovering Jorobe's LinkedIn page. And what they found in both prior and current work history gave rise for even greater concern than had initially been anticipated. As it was revealed, some of Jorobe's prior employment involved leaderships as well as mentor roles. Most notably, working for a local church, the Boy Scouts of America, as well as teaching private piano lessons to over a dozen students, as can be seen stated on his work profile. Undoubtedly, with such community-oriented roles, Jorobe's access to minors would not have solely been restricted to the confines of TikTok. And what grabs my attention the most are the private piano lessons he offers. I am hesitant to imagine the idea of Jorobe teaching a student piano lessons away from prying eyes, quite possibly in the privacy of his own home, if that's where these lessons were held. Though currently no allegations have surfaced regarding these lessons, it's still a thought that unsettles me greatly. With the information of his real name, work history, and current place of employment now in the hands of a vindictive community of TikTok users and former fans alike, the gig was now officially up. There was nowhere left for him to hide. No ability to desperately sweep the mess that he had made back under the rug where he had kept it hidden for so long. What Jorobe had been doing behind closed doors was now publicly documented, and with each passing day, millions of users would soon come to learn of his double life, realizing that the admirable creator that many had once looked upon to speak for those without a voice had actually never existed. So, with only two choices laid before him, and an entire community demanding answers, Jorobe did what aligned best within his nature, and in just a few short days, Jorobe would go on to surprise everyone with his much anticipated response.
Hello, it is me, Jorobe, and I wanted to say I am so sorry for being a tad bit sneaky around underage kids. All the almond milk got to my head. My bad. I hope you can forgive me and we move on together. What a happy ending. I'm so happy. Yip-ee.
Oh, were you expecting me to build up to some sort of poorly made apology video, or Jorobe failing to attempt to take accountability for his own actions? Well, you, much like the entirety of TikTok at the time, are feeling the same anticlimacticness, as well as, I'd imagine, a tinge of confusion. Look at that, the power of the old switcheroo. Yeah, so with the weight of the world on his shoulders and a lot, and I mean a lot, of damning allegations and evidence stacked against him, Jorobe allowed his silence to speak in his defense, going on to remove his TikTok pages, both his main and second account, his Instagram, as well as deleting his Snapchat, before vanishing back into the depths of the internet, almost as if his entire online presence had been merely some form of bad fever dream. Though, just because Jorobe was done with the internet, did not mean that the internet was done with him. Despite him running off into the night, users quickly referred to his LinkedIn profile once more and found his current place of employment working as a church finance manager. Understanding the risks of Jorobe actively in a community-oriented workplace, where children most definitely were involved, some users took it upon themselves to try and contact the church directly to let them know who exactly they had on staff. The most noteworthy attempt of this was from Papa Gut, who claimed to have called the church, asking if Jorobe worked there, given that his profile was clearly listed on the staff's directory, located on their website. Upon answering his call, Papa Gut was informed that, yes, in fact, Jorobe worked at the church, to which the individual on the line questioned as to why this was of any particular importance. Papa Gut then attempted to lay out all the allegations to this individual, hiding the credibility of these claims, while presumably providing resources to where they could verify such information. However, this individual of the church did not engage with Papa Gut beyond just a few words before disconnecting from the call.
They immediately hung up after they said, "Oh, thank you," and hung up. So I don't know if they thought it was some kind of a prank call. What I do know is that I generally don't condone this kind of stuff, but this is something that genuinely makes me afraid.
At first, it would appear that what Papa Gut had told the staff member had most likely been brushed off as some sort of deranged caller attempting to badmouth one of their own. But only a few days later, when revisiting the same staff's directory located on the church's website, Jorobe's profile could no longer be found, leading one to conclude that upon the discovery of Jorobe's online allegations, he had been most likely fired from his duties as a financial manager and sent back out into the world to do God only knows what. From this point forward, Jorobe would, for all intents and purposes, become a digital ghost, disappearing online entirely. Once his former church had seemingly let him go, any leads as to where Jorobe slithered off to quickly ran cold after 2021. No further TikTok accounts, Instagrams, Snapchats, or work-related profiles could be found. It was like after a certain date, John Robert Bell just vanished into thin air. I tried looking into online forums, searching through websites such as LinkedIn, and reviewing his prior employment history, hoping to find any sort of answer or indicator as to where Jorobe had ended up, but it was to no avail. Now, I could just take the positives here and walk away from this story. After all, Jorobe had been deplatformed, and his influence as a widely known creator would never be grossly misused again to manipulate minors. But no matter how much I tried, I couldn't just shake the thought of never knowing why his name suddenly didn't tie back to him after 2021. It was just too bizarre to let go. So, out of curiosity and not really expecting it to go anywhere, I asked a group chat of friends on Discord if they'd be interested in helping me peek around a bit. They said yes, and so I provided all the details that I had acquired while researching this video. And to my surprise, within 10 minutes, a friend of mine, who goes by Crying Into the Abyss on Twitter, provided me with a legal document that I think you will find a little interesting. On May 25th, 2022, a change of name case was filed by a John Robert Bell in the jurisdiction of Clay County, which just so happens to be the same county the city of Moorhead, Minnesota is housed under. As can be referenced from his former, very public work profile, this is the last known city that Jorobe lived in. And when we look at the date of birth the applicant put down for their filing, we find the date 08/13/1993, cross-referencing that date with Jorobe's very public famous birthdays page. And, well, would you look at that, we have ourselves a match. As it would seem, we now finally had a conclusive answer as to what truly happened to Jorobe after the events of his downfall. And it's about as pathetic as I expected. Instead of owning up and taking accountability for the needless emotional damage he inflicted on numerous young creators and minors for his own putrid forms of entertainment, he not only opted to cower from the consequences of his actions by deleting all of his social media pages, but it would appear that he went as far as changing his legal name as a means to remain hidden from that point forward. In my personal belief, I think it goes without saying that these are not the reactions of an innocent man facing wrongful allegations made against their character as well as their livelihood. And truthfully, I believe that his audience, as well as his alleged victims, deserved some form of closure for the way he had manipulated them for the duration of his time as a TikTok celebrity. But, unfortunately, Jorobe is the kind of man who will only ever think and care for himself no matter how hard he tries to portray otherwise. And so, like the menace he is, he will forever remain as a grim reminder of the dark history that is often overlooked and lost to time by the ever fast-paced momentum that is the culture of TikTok. Though Jorobe is now gone, the red flags provided in hindsight can be utilized in the future for when, inevitably, another monster attempts to rise from the dark corners of the internet as a friendly face you can relate to on your homepage when you're harmlessly browsing online. Oh wow, you're awake. That's really cool. If you're still watching, I want to take a moment to say thank you for making it all the way through to the end of today's video. You being here and watching this far really does help me out a lot. And I feel so bad because all I have to offer to you in return is a sour taste in your mouth from what we have discussed here today. But I hope it was entertaining nonetheless. If you enjoyed today's video, it would be really appreciated if you considered dropping a like, a comment sharing your thoughts, as well as hitting subscribe with the bell notification on, as it helps me grow as a channel and quite frankly just feels really cool and supportive. Thanks for that in advance if you do decide you want to stick around. If you'd like to support me and what I do here on this channel, feel free to consider checking out my Patreon, which can also be found down below in the description, or becoming a channel member. It's a super helpful way to support support the channel in between uploads, as these do take a bit of time to make. However, it isn't required by any means. There will be a dedicated section to those kind individuals here in just a moment. If you'd like to follow me on other platforms after the video to help further boost my ego, feel free to follow the links in the description to my Twitter, my Blue Sky, Instagram, and Twitch, as they are great ways to reach out and connect if you're feeling like you just want to say hey, or to send me obscure photos like this one. I don't really know particularly what to make of this, but I appreciate the thought. Well, I must say, it has been a journey. We made some lifelong friends. We threw tomatoes and booed. You held my firstborn and were grandfathered into the family. Okay, maybe you didn't do that, but I was glad to have gone through this tale with you nonetheless. Once more, my name is Wonder. It was super cool to have you here today. I've got some more deep dives to go make for you. I've got a great one in store that I'm already working on. So until next time, be safe, take care, and farewell. I can't blink. If you're still here, I'd like to take a moment to express my gratitude to my kind-hearted supporters over on Patreon. I truly am forever grateful for your generosity. I know times are rather tough for a lot of people right now, so for you to support me in such a way with everything going on in the lives of your own, I really can't find proper words other than thank you. I'd also like to give another warm thank you to the high-tier community members such as J. Jackson Hall, Alien Ace Cat, Goth Barbie 3000, Amanda Barnett, Ellis, and an extra special thank you to Alice Beth and Bacon Priogi for their highest tier subscription support. You all have my expressive gratitude. Thank you. Be well, stay safe, and good night.